Good afternoon and good morning for some of those who are listening in. My name is Dominic Green. I'm the Director of Health and Safety Initiatives for Delta Upsilon headquarters. I'm joined today by a special guest panelist, Nicole Polinsky, one of our chapter development directors, who is going to be available to answer any questions specifically around the Merit Program. So excited to have Nicole joining us today. We'll have an opportunity to answer questions at the end, but this program it's going to be a pretty quick webinar just to give you the basic overview. I have been traveling throughout this semester to many chapters, and these are a lot of the questions that have popped up. So really good opportunity for the advisors who are joining us today, and those of us who might be listening in at a later date, just to learn a little bit more about the waiver program, what goes into it, and what needs to happen between now and the end of this academic year. So let's get started. Sorry, technology is not my friend today. Okay, hold on. Okay, so just basic overview. We're going to talk a little bit about where we're currently at, and a quick reminder for everyone about what the policy currently is. Give you a history of the waiver and kind of how this all came to be. Last fall, I did a webinar about the Substance Free Housing Program, and the waiver wasn't even part of the conversation. So a year later, obviously, we do have a waiver now. And then we're going to spend the majority of the time just breaking down the waiver components, which are the 5 areas of the Merit Program that specifically relate to health and safety. And then I'll talk about timeline and application and what that looks like, and then have an opportunity for questions at the end of the program. Perfect. So currently, as of right now, we have 50 of our DU facilities that 50 chapters that are housed of our 70 plus chapters and colonies. So right now, 21 of them are already under Substance Free Housing Program. We had 2 early adopters this year that joined the program. Our previous early adopters either had been substance free for a while, or we also had a chunk of about 11 chapters that joined the early adopter program last fall. So fall 18 to be able to receive the substance free housing credit. So that is kind of where we're at just by the numbers. Just a reminder what the current policy is. So when the board voted to go substance free, starting last August, so August 2018, hard liquor was removed from the chapter facility. So anything below 15% ABV or 30 proof. If you're unclear what is under 30 proof, we have a resource on our substance free housing tab on the website that does break down. And this has been helpful for a lot of our undergraduates. It breaks down what is under 15% and what is over 15% of what's allowed to be served. I know many campuses are starting to adopt some similar policies to mirror the North American Interfraternity Conference's policies, but if that's helpful for you, or if I was even unclear when I first started this role. So the way it works right now, so 21-year-olds can still have alcohol in their rooms, and obviously hard liquor can only be provided at third-party vendors or an off-site location. So if you are having a formal somewhere at a hotel or renting out a bar or something like that, then that's okay to have hard liquor served, but it's not to be served at any of our chapter facilities. That includes tailgates. So then the way it works, so starting next fall, August 2020, that if the chapter did not qualify or apply for the waiver, the chapter must be in complete compliance with the Substance Free Housing Program. So that is alcohol. That's no alcohol in the house at all. Many of you know this. The alumni will have an opportunity to host 6. It says pre-approved. The language we've kind of changed a little bit to be that it'll be an application process that's already launched. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the webinar. But opportunity to have a third-party vendor or BYOB events. Many alumni are using this opportunity around tailgating season, football season, but also home. It could be a reunion events, Founders Days, et cetera, et cetera. So perfect. So here's the history of the waiver program. So I visited about 31 chapters last year, last academic year. Got a lot of feedback from alumni and undergrads. We did receive a few proposals from alumni groups and undergrads of giving us some specific feedback on the Substance Free Housing program and chapters, ideas, or specific adjustments to the policy. So we formed a Substance Free Housing work group that was made up of the 2 undergrads on our international board of directors, as well as 3 other board members and 2 staff members. So we reviewed the proposals, and specifically we worked on a specific proposal that just called for an adjustment to the current policy, and that was a waiver program that if you met certain standards, the chapter would still be allowed to keep alcohol. So the way the program worked out, so that was all wrapped up late spring, and then we rolled out the waiver program in May. So that is kind of where we're at right now. So we continue to be in a place to be able to receive feedback. If there are specific questions or ideas or things like that, please pass that information towards me, that I can share it with share it with the substance-free housing work group and the board of directors. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna walk you through the program, how to qualify. A lot of people have asked me questions about cost, specifically and then if you did get the waiver, what's allowed, what's not allowed. Obviously, the one standard across the board is hard liquor in a chapter facility is a big no matter what. So that's never going to be part of the conversation. And then the last thing is just I'll talk you through the application deadline and process of what that's going to look like for this year. Okay. I'm going to try to slow down. I know I'm a fast talker. All right, so the components of the waiver. So just this is an important slide, and a lot of House Corps people asked me this question specifically at LI this summer. But what the waiver program is in its current state is that it delays the substance-free housing program for another 2 years. So it would not. So in the way it currently stands right now, that substance-free housing would not be fully implemented for DU until fall 2022. So if a chapter qualified, so in theory, a chapter could get the waiver both years. A chapter could maybe only apply for one of the years. I've had some conversations with some alumni and undergrads that they might apply for the waiver for the first year, but not do it the second year because they needed some more time to transition from where they're currently at to a substance-free housing facility. So that is something that some chapters are having those conversations. And this is a big one. The decision is really going to be made by the House Corporation or the Alumni Board. So just because a chapter wants the waiver, it needs to be a decision that by the property owners, the people who run the facility, and a conversation between the House Corporation, the undergrads, make sure that everyone's on board. So we will lean on the local decision. So good example, we do have some of our current chapters that have been substance-free for years. Just because we have a waiver does not mean that they can automatically get a waiver. It will be a local decision. So that is up to the House Corporation, Alumni Board advisors on where you all want to go with this. That also goes with the same thing would be with the tailgates, with the 6 alumni events that are allowed. Once again, that's going to always be a local decision. I also wrote, or if allowed. So sometimes in some cases, the university, the chapter is substance free because the university is a dry campus or only allows dry facilities on their campus. So once again, just because we allow it, we will definitely go with the local decision, or the university decision would definitely outweigh our policy. So that's a big thing for all of our advisors, House Corps, but also making sure that it is in your hands. It's not something that we're going to just say, just because, wave our magic wand and say, you can have alcohol if you guys are not ready for it, or you're ready to move on to being substance free. So if a chapter does not qualify, we will expect full compliance by next fall. So the chapter, and we'll walk through the qualification. And it could be something, like I said before, if a chapter might not qualify this year, but would qualify the following year. That is something that some chapters are also preparing for as well. So, all right, and let me get started and walking through some of the other components. So here's how it's going to work with the waiver program. So what's going to be allowed is that 21-year-old members can consume alcohol in their rooms less than 15%, as well as the insurance rate will stay the same. So if you're currently, I'll just use the word wet facility or still allow alcohol, you are currently already paying about $100 per man in insurance. If you are a dry facility as we speak, or a substance-free housing facility, you get the 15% discount. So it's not an additional $100 per man. You're not paying an extra $100 on what you're already paying. You're just going to be basically continuing to pay the extra insurance rate for not being dry, if that makes sense. So that will be something. So it's not, some chapters thought it was an additional, meaning they'd be paying like $200 to be able to keep alcohol in their facility. So it is basically you'll be paying the existing rate that what you're paying right now. So it's a per man per year, roughly, in insurance. So if you went substance free starting next fall, then you'd be getting the 15% waiver, which about equals out to be, I think this year is maybe like, it was like $99, or depending on the chapter, like $100 dollars. I'm not the insurance expert, but if you have any questions about that, I can direct you to our insurance experts on staff. But yeah, so it is not an additional rate, it's what you're already going to be paying. So you're basically going to be paying, you're going to continue to pay to for the luxury to have alcohol in the facility. So that's not an extra thing, it's just it's staying the same. But some chapters thought they were paying $200 as opposed to just what they're already currently paying. All right, so what I'm going to do is go into the waiver components, this is going to be the important stuff. So I will walk through the different components of the waiver program, of the Merit Program. I do have Nicole on the call as well, so if there are any specific questions towards the end, we can go back some slides and walk through the program. So if you're not aware of the program, the DU website has a very good web page that walks you through very simple steps of what the Merit Program is. I'm going to try to give you a high-level overview of the program, but if you need to do some deeper dive into what the Merit Program is, check out the DU website and then click on the Merit tab. There's some very good information there. Okay, so Merit Program is a standards program that identifies the 11 key areas essential for a chapter to succeed. So these are all measurable things, specifically to make sure that our chapters are achieving that high level of achievement. So I'll walk through what those 11 areas are, but the waiver program only hits 5 of the 11, but at least if you're not familiar with the Merit Program, I wanted to give a high level overview. The Merit Program, chapters can achieve either aspiration level, expectation level, or minimum level. Someone described it to me as gold, silver, or bronze, however you want to do it, but for this particular case, we're gonna really be focusing on the expectation level, which is the middle level for the waiver program. But I wanted to let you all know. So you know, if a chapter is hitting aspiration level, that means they're going above and beyond and just really killing it in that particular area. So it could be philanthropy, it could be service. They might have the highest GPA on campus. So whatever that might look like, that they are doing incredibly well in that particular area, a standard area. And then some chapters don't even hit these standards programs as well at all. So the Merit Program is chaired by a member of our board of directors, and Nicole on our staff is our staff member that manages that program. So there's a committee involved. There's also Merit coaches that work with chapters that aren't hitting their standards. So we have a lot of resources available to chapters to help them meet these 11 standards throughout the year. But we wanted to at least walk you through the high level areas of what this looks like. So these are the 11 areas. So I'll start the areas on the left, in the white text are the areas. So you see advisory support, GPA, membership is the size of the chapter. So being above the average fraternity size on campus. We have fundraising targets for philanthropy, specifically around the Global Service Initiative. We have service requirements, and then accounts receivable is making sure that they are paid up for their bills through IHQ. So the area on the right, the gold, and things that are in gold for the rest of the presentation are the important things that you all need to pay attention to. So specifically loss prevention area, CEP, program attendance, our learning assessments, and then our associate member education program. So I'm going to really focus on the column on the right on all of our gold areas to walk you through what specifically is needed for the waiver program. Okay. All right. So once again, I'm gonna do a slide for each of the 5 areas. So follow along. This will also the presentation will be made available on the website at some point, either tomorrow or early next week. So if you have anyone else on your board who has questions about this and wants to follow along, at least what the steps are, also myself and Nicole are also going to be available at the end of this call or via email or phone call if you have any specific questions about where your chapter is performing in any of these areas. Okay. All right, so the first one, the chapter excellence plan. So the chapter excellence plan, so the chapter needs to complete 60% of the CEP for this academic school year. So last year it was 70% to hit expectation level. So it was lowered by 10%. So a lot of chapters are happy about that. So I specifically wanted to point out some things. If you're not familiar with the Chapter Excellence Plan, there is currently a leaderboard on the website. So if you just go to our webpage and click on Chapter Excellence Plan, one of the first tabs when you scroll down a little is the leaderboard. That can tell you right now where your chapter currently sits, meaning how many CEP points they've already submitted. So some chapters have only submitted like 3 or 4 things. So if you need to get on your chapters to focus on it, some chapters have told me it's really going to be a Thanksgiving or winter break thing. It's great. I just hope that they remember to do it. Some chapters have been submitting CEPs throughout the semester as they go along. I think our leader right now is Georgia Tech, and they have submitted a significant amount already this semester. So there are 2 deadline submissions for CEP. There's a fall deadline, which I listed right here. There's also going to be a spring deadline, which is in May. So there's specific criteria that needs to be submitted both in the fall and the spring. I listed on here the CEP criteria list. That is also a tab. If you go on the CEP page and scroll down, there's specifically a box you click on, and it's a PDF file that lists all 8. It's basically all 8 areas, exec areas, and every criteria that needs to be submitted. There's specifically things on there, things that have asterisks or things that only need to be submitted once a year, meaning once this academic year. And then there's things that need to be submitted semesterly. So there are specific target things that need to be submitted by December 30th. I highly recommend, as you're working with your chapters, to submit those things before December 30th, because that way, if they don't submit the appropriate documentation or just don't quite understand what the requirement is, that the person on staff who's grading it can give them some feedback. They can go back, fix it, and they have time to fix it. A lot of our chapters who wait until December 30th to submit everything, there's not enough time to go back and forth, and there's not enough time to give that feedback. So I definitely, please tell your chapters to start submitting things quickly. Every chapter I've met with, and I've done probably about almost 15 visits, maybe even more than that this fall. Just been talking about getting that stuff in ASAP. And there's fall submission deadlines. There's also going to be spring submission deadlines, but I wanted to at least focus on to get that stuff in. It needs to just be 60% of the entire CEP, but there are specific requirements. The guidebook, which is the bottom bullet point I listed, is an Excel document that also lists the point values. So it's a nice way for chapters to track their progress throughout the year. They can highlight areas that they've been submitted. There's also certain things that are worth 5 points or worth 3 points. So it's important to note the things that if they completely don't turn in anything in the fall, they're going to be missing out on a significant amount of points. That's going to be harder for them to hit their 60% requirement in the spring. Okay, so check out the website. It lays it out very well and walks you through everything. It also, there's a button on there to submit CPs. It's very easy. It's you literally putting your name, what chapter you're from, and then there's drop boxes for all the criteria, and it's attached to each position, so it's very easy to submit. I mean, for a lot of these things, as long as they have appropriate documentation, it should take someone maybe 2 or 3 minutes each to submit each area of documentation. So let us know if you have any questions about that. And specifically, your chapter liaison, whoever's the primary liaison for your chapter, is going to be the best resource for you to kind of walk you through what the chapter needs to do for CP. All right, next, program attendance. So this was 10 last year. It is now 8. I'm putting all the important things in the gold, as I mentioned earlier. So our cycle started at the 2019 Leadership Institute in Indianapolis, and will end with the 2020 Global Service Initiative this coming June, excuse me. So just 8 members have to attend one of these programs that I listed up on the slide. So we have lots of programs. So the first one was LI, where we needed 2 people to attend LI. We have our President's Academy, which is January, the Regional Leadership Academy season, which is, they're scattered throughout regionally. So we have plenty of opportunity to send people that. Also our Global Service Initiative and our Delta Upsilon Emerging Leaders Program, which is in early June. GSI obviously is offered 3 times a year. We also offer scholarships to the Undergraduate Interfraternity Institute, which is UIFI or Leadership. So if chapters attend that, they could literally get a free registration to attend another program. UIFI is one of the best programs out there. Specifically, if you want to have a high impact leadership experience, it's a program sponsored by the NIC, the North American Interfraternity Conference. But we offer scholarships to UIFI every year, and a lot of times they don't get utilized by our chapters. But I'm a big fan. This year I'll be going to my 20th UIFI. So last year, as I mentioned before, the requirement was 10. This year it's 8, so that was lowered. So just make sure that chapters are paying attention to this. We did have some chapters that just did not come to LI this summer, and they were automatically not eligible for the waiver program. So that was only a few chapters that were housed, but please make sure that you're talking to your men, that they are registering. There's plenty of opportunities to register. If you have any questions about this, please talk to your liaison specifically for your chapter. If you don't know who that is, contact me. I can let you know who that is. So each chapter is assigned a specific DU liaison. But yeah, please make sure this is a big one for us. At these programs as well, is there specific loss prevention educational sessions that they have to sign into that are actually mandatory that we take attendance. So those are very specific and that they need to be at those things to be able to not only get the loss prevention credit, but also to make sure that they are actually in attendance at these programs. All right, next. All right, so our associate member education program. This is one of the components of the Merit Program. This is not, and we're I'm going to add a disclaimer right now. We are working on a way to kind of measure the full implementation for this. As you'll notice throughout the rest of the 5 components, there's a number attached or a percentage attached. For this particular one, I think this is one where we've seen some struggle with the chapter. We have I put here on the slide on our DU website under chapter. So under resources and then chapter resources, if you scroll down to the VP membership education section, we literally have the PDFs for both the facilitator guide and the associate member workbook for our associate member education program. You might need, some chapters just need to print it out. The question is whether or not what are they using to educate their newest members into the chapter? Some chapters are still utilizing just the Cornerstone, which is not fully implementing our associate member education workbook. You can use the two of them together, the Cornerstone and our associate member program, but the program is really laid out. It's almost, I think, like a teacher's manual, and then the AM workbook is kind of like a course packet for if you're taking a class. So it's very well laid out, and it's very easy to implement. Just a lot of our chapters are kind of missing, are not fully understanding that this is actually a component. It's a Merit program requirement, but it's also this year it's also part of the waiver program. So we're exploring some ways to just measure what the percentage of implementation that they're doing. Specifically, I know a lot of advisors struggled with this last year, and how much is the chapter utilizing the program. A lot of advisors just didn't know. So that was coming back sometimes to their staff liaison. So that's something that I've recognized is a little bit of a gap that we need to explore ways to help chapters with implementation, but also figuring out right now where they're currently at. Are they implementing 20% of the program? Is it 40%? Is it 0%? Is it 100%? So what does that look like? So more to come, probably come January, February. But just as a little assessment that chapters can use to help them really figure out what are the key learning outcomes that they're hitting currently, and then how do we make sure that we line up what they need to be doing versus what they're currently doing. So from an education standpoint, so more to come on that. But if at minimum, if you know your chapter is not utilizing the associate member program, just go to the website and all the chapters I visited this year, I've walked them through the program. But sometimes they need a physical copy in front of their face to be able to actually walk through page by page to make sure that the program works, because the program is very much designed to be almost like a class. So it's really easy to implement, but a lot of chapters just are not fully understanding or getting that we have this amazing resource for them right on the website. So, okay, perfect. All right, the next one is our loss prevention section. So there's 2 components. So the easy one is no loss prevention violations this academic year. So and to define violation, some chapters and advisors have asked me this year on our travels of what's a violation. So the definition that I got from my colleagues are standing responsible through the DU judicial process, and they specifically violated a loss prevention policy. There are going to be times where, as an example, a chapter could have gotten like a recruitment infraction through an IFC, right? So that might be something they might have gotten IFC sanction, but it isn't necessarily a DU policy violation. It isn't necessarily something that that they were found responsible or put on some level, had some kind of status change through our office. So if you have questions about if the chapter has had any type of conduct violations this year, please pass those along to myself or Sarah Ray, who is my colleague, who is our Director of Loss Prevention. She's our one who handles all of our conduct issues. So it does not mean that every little tiny report that we get into the office automatically counts as like, this is my term, but a strike, or that would count against the chapter. But we definitely look at everything case by case, and what is, so if a chapters might be found in violation of something, but just was received a written, hey, revise your loss prevention plan and risk management strategies for your next party, like that wouldn't necessarily be a strike against for this particular purpose for the waiver. But definitely, if you have questions about any previous conduct issues that have happened this fall, so if a chapter is suspended, the chapter is currently on probation, some of the other chapters is put on reorg status, that would obviously is a much different area, and more than likely that means that they would not qualify. But if there's some smaller scale things that have come in throughout the fall, just continue to ask us, and then we can walk through what is and what is not. The other thing about it is the chapters achieve 50% of available loss prevention credits. So that would also be your claim history, your loss prevention history from the last couple years. So if you know for sure your chapter had some kind of major loss prevention violation either last year or the year before, or there's any kind of claim history, meaning there was a specific loss that was attached to any kind of claim against the chapter, that could potentially disqualify you for the waiver for next year. So those are, if you have any specific questions about what credits you are receiving, I listed the things that are specifically attached to housed chapters. So making sure that the chapter is up to date with their property, that'd be property insurance or property inspection. Also, this goes back to program attendance and Greek Life EDU. So I'm going to talk about Greek Life EDU in a second. So the chapter receives specific loss prevention discounts if they're going to the mandatory programs each year. So if you have any questions about what are a breakdown of all those credits that you received in the past, please let me know. It is on the website under resources, chapter resources, and then if you go down to the loss prevention officer, there's a specific tab that walks you through the 1920 specific credits available. So if you click on that, that'll walk you through. So if you have questions about where the chapter is currently at, let me know. I can direct you to Carl, or I can get that information to you. But that's a big one that some chapters are going to have a lot of. This is why a lot of these things. So program attendance, Greek Life EDU, not only all of those things will not only help you get the waiver, but also helps lower your insurance, right? So this is something that all those things are tied together, but some chapters will just blow off going LI, or they're not doing Greek Life EDU and they're like, oh, whatever, and not realizing that actually helps them save money in the long run. So if you have any questions, please let us know. It's hard to do an individual breakdown for each chapter because there's so many components to this waiver, but if you have specific questions, please let us know at the end, especially if they're chapter specific. All right, and the last one for the waiver, there's two components that need to be completed at 90%. So this is I put in all members in caps. So it's Greek Life EDU Part 1 and Part 2. So in theory, if the chapters are doing it right, they have been having their associate members complete the program during their associate member program. They complete Parts 1 and 2, and then if they do that over 4 years, then hitting 90% is not going to be an issue at all. If they have not been hitting 100% completion of Greek Life EDU, that's going to be harder as you start adding up, because this is the entire membership of the chapter. So this is first year, second years, third years, fourth years students, whoever's on your roster. So this is going to be a little bit of a task, and that you guys have till the end of the academic year, but to track people down and making sure that they have actually completed both parts. If you're not sure what percentage of your chapter has completed that, I can follow up with you. I can direct you to your liaison, or I can also help you run a report for you. A lot of the chapters that I visited this fall have been connecting with Jana or their specific liaison to be able to walk through, okay, where are we at with this? I know some chapter presidents are a little bit stressed out about trying to get juniors and seniors to complete Greek Life EDU, but it is an important part of the waiver program. So the other part is the Delta Upsilon Membership Outcome Survey. This is the survey that comes out late January, early February. And the chapter has about 2 weeks to complete that. So that does take about 30 minutes to complete. That is a pretty comprehensive survey that measures all the areas of the chapter. So it's specifically brotherhood, loss prevention, alcohol, sexual assault, all of those things, kind of measuring people's willingness, compliance, thoughts, opinions, all of those things. We've been doing this now for 4 years. It's a partnership with Dyad Strategies. So we're actually one of the first partners with Dyad, and now we have 4 years of data. So if you're wondering what percentage of the chapter completed it last year, I can also follow up as well. Noah Borton from our staff is the one who manages that program, but it is both Greek Life EDU and the Membership Outcome Survey. Really just most chapters, to make it easier, literally at the first chapter meeting in February, they just have everyone bring their laptops to chapter and make them do it right there. But you do this, if you have issues with attendance at chapter meetings, you're going to have to make sure that your president or membership ed VP or whoever that is tracking these people down, because it is not something they can take in 3 minutes, but it is something that's very important. But now that it's attached to the waiver, so not only is it not only is it part of the Merit Program, but it's also part of the waiver now. So let me know, like I said, if you have questions about Greek Life EDU or what you guys have done in the past in the Membership Outcome Survey, let me know as well. All right, so I want to just go back to the event piece, change gears a little bit. This has already been kind of out there for public consumption, but alumni events are allowed under the current waiver program, also allowed under the substance-free housing. So even if the chapter is going to continue to be substance-free, they just need to register for the tailgate. So you can register for all 6 of your tailgates in one document. They need to be planned by the alumni, so they can't just be like an alum who graduated last year and then 50 guys from the chapter in attendance. It needs to be planned. It can be co-organized with the chapter, but it cannot be something. It needs to be an alumni-run event. This is just at the house. If you do all your tailgates in a parking lot close to the stadium, then you don't need to register them. This is just stuff that would be at the actual chapter facility, and then this would be in common areas of the chapter, so front yard, parking lots, inside the house, whatever that looks like. And I mentioned before, third-party vendor or BYOB, and our legal folks have said, remember, it's a local decision. So if the university doesn't allow tailgates at the house, or if you all don't want them, or you only want to have 2 tailgates, that we allow 6, but the House Corps is only going to allow 2 to happen at the house. That's totally fine. It's up to you all to determine how many you all want to do. All right, last one is the chapter events. So this is what's going to be allowed under the minimum. If you qualify for the waiver, 21-year-olds can have alcohol in their rooms. You have to continue to pay the $100, and they're allowed to have 6 total events at the house per year. So think about 6 signature events. This might be a holiday party. This could be a semi-formal, whatever that looks like. So 6 registered events at the chapter house per year. So no more than 4 per semester term. The chapter will register those events through us, much like the alumni event registration process. We also will let the university and IFC know that this is our policy, the chapter. So annually, we'll let the university know, hey, the chapter is receiving a waiver. These are the amount of events that they're allowed to register, and giving them those guidelines. Obviously, this is our policy, not the university policy, but a lot of university partners obviously have been asking for just, hey, if they do qualify for waiver, let us know, so we know at least letting them know what they're allowed to have. So the chapter isn't registering 15 events, but also that they're both compliance with university policies and IHQ policies. Okay. So this is the big one that many of you are probably wondering what this looks like. So we will launch the application March 1st. It's going to be a pretty simple form, just with some contact information and then obviously making sure that the party who filled it out. So we're going to have an alum fill it out and not an undergrad fill it out. So we're going to actually ask for House Corporation President or main point of contact from the advisory board, House Corporation Alumni Board to fill this out. It'll launch March 1st, and then the application is not going to be very comprehensive. It's just whether or not you want to do it or not, and it'll be due by April 15th. So there are some things that are due beyond April 15th, but at least we'll know your intention. So if there's anything missing, we have enough time to track everything down by the end of the semester. We wanted to make sure it was early enough, so when people are still in school and still paying attention to email, phone calls, et cetera, that we can track things down. Some things that are still going to be ongoing, or the CP isn't due till the end of May. So that's going to be obviously a big component of the waiver program, as well as program attendance as well. So if you've already hit your 8 number, with LI, President's Academy, and RLA, then you're good to go. But some chapters, by April 15th, you realize, hey, you still need to send one more person to, one of these programs this summer. So the chapter is going to have to figure out, okay, we still have to send someone to UIFI, or we have to send someone to Dual or GSI, whatever that looks like. So that way gives you all time. We can notify the undergraduate president and the alumni president or alumni main point of contact that they have enough time to figure things out, and then go from there. So, and then we will notify everyone by July 1st. So we, obviously, the CEP, it's due by the end of May. And then obviously there's be a couple other things coming in, meaning if people still attend, you can register for a program. We want to make sure you actually attended the program. Just because someone registered doesn't mean they actually counts. They need to actually go to the program. And then we will notify you by July 1st. Perfect. All right. Okay. Questions. We have a little question box. So if you see on your right, there should be an opportunity to ask questions. That is it for the program part of it. But I wanted to make sure if you have any questions, if it's a very specific question about your chapter, feel free to email me, and we can set up a call this week or next week or after the holidays about the chapter. So I know I've been visiting a lot of our chapters who potentially might be applying for the waiver this year. So they are well aware of what the waiver program is. But just to let you know, the deadline piece and the timeline is actually, you all who are on this webinar now are going to be listening to the webinar are the first people to actually hear the timeline and deadline for the webinar. So we will be putting that information out in the next month or so, but just wanted to give you all a heads up because this is going to be an alumni driven decision and not just, a 19-year-old chapter president be like, yeah, we want the waiver, and not really thinking about it. So any questions?
I will. It was Lisa Llewellyn.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Some crowd noise around me. Apologize. Any questions? I'll give it a second. Nicole, did you have anything else you wanted to add in?
I do not.
What? Oh, hello? Nicole?
I don't have anything else to add in.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, if you all have any questions, definitely reach out. There's a lot of components in place that we will just let you all know. We will be covering all this at President's Academy in January. So if your chapter has not had elections yet, or about to have elections, make sure, obviously, that the new president or someone who you have confidence in is attending that. We will walk through this almost exact same presentation with all the presidents in January. So they will have a good indication. We'll also remind them of it in February as well. The CEP thing is probably the biggest thing. CEP and Greek Life EDU is probably the two big things that you all could help with right now to make sure, like, hey, where are we at? Even if you just send your chapter president an email or a text, be like, hey, do you know where you're at with Greek Life EDU or CEP, to make sure they get stuff in this semester. I think that's a key component that'll be super helpful for you all to help with this. But if there's no other questions, I will sign out, but appreciate you listening in. And like I said, if there's anything you need more clarification or anything like that, myself, Nicole, or anyone on staff are available to help you. So thanks again. Happy holidays, and please be in touch if you have any questions. And we will be sending out more information with more timelines and deadlines about the waiver program in the next month or so. But we at least wanted to give you a preview of what's going on right now and what's to come. But if you want to definitely start thinking, especially between now, if you have a house corporation or board meeting between now and April 15th, is to have this conversation around if you want the waiver this year. One of the big conversations that a lot of undergraduate chapters are having right now as well is the cost piece. Is like, they're like, wow, if we actually have a chance to save money, like maybe it is an opportunity that that we're okay with the chapter being substance free, maybe not this year, but the following year, right? So these are some bigger picture conversations that I've had with a couple chapters right now, and I have a success story from a chapter. So if you want specific who had big picture conversations with the alumni and undergrads, and they decided to go early adopter because they realized that you know, they wanted to, they realized that they're saving the cost savings and being able then to invest that money other places that they were spending on social events, investing into the brotherhood events, but also investing some of that money back into the house as far as furniture and upgrades and whatnot, that the alumni were kind of having a bigger picture conversation around, like, okay, now it's time to start investing back into the actual property if we're not going to be using the property for social events anymore. So yeah, so that's been, we have a couple success stories that we've seen from this past year of chapters kind of making that shift, and it's been pretty helpful. So, okay. Well, that is it for me. I appreciate you all being part of this. And if you have any other questions, please reach out. All right. Thank you, everyone.